I just want to have a look. Sorry, so to get the screen share going. Hi everybody and welcome to this tutorial this Wednesday afternoon. Can I just hear and see at the moment, I think we've just got Doxa Brooklyn here. Doxa, can you hear me? Okay, thanks very much. Doxa, I'm going to ask you just now whether or not you can see the PowerPoint presentation. So just please just be patient and let's just see what you can see on your screen. Okay, so you should be able to see me now. Now let's see if we can get to the screen share. Okay, can you see the PowerPoint presentation? Okay, can you just write it, please, because it's just a bit unclear. Okay. Okay, Doxa, can you just tell me, please, can you see the Critical Thinking and Worldviews Cornerstone opening page, please? Can you now see a page that says what we're doing today? Okay, thanks very much. All right, so now I'm going to go on with the PowerPoint. Please just message me in the chat if you're struggling with seeing the PowerPoint, okay? Okay. So today what we're going to be focusing on is that we're going to be looking at a guide to rewriting your essays, your audio presentation, and input on explanations, reasoning, and fallacies. We're going to be looking at how to apply those skills as well. All right, so let's get started. For your third assignment, what you're going to be asked to do is to return, you're going to have yours returned to you by the end of this week in all probability. And you will find that there will be comments in your essay that will be returned with tracked commentary as to where you can improve in terms of critical thinking writing skills. For example, we might be asking you to strengthen your argument, your referencing, and how to get rid of fallacies. We'll be looking at fallacies today. So what I want you to do is to use the tracked version to make your changes and make sure that the tracking is on. You will find this under the review menu in MS Word. So in other words, you're going to take your essay and you're going to type your changes in so that when you do that in track changes, it does it in another color. And then this way, I will be able to see when I mark it, what are the changes that you made to improve that. If you don't know about where to find review in MS Word, I'm going to take you there to that place in MS Word. So if you could just text me again if it's something you want me to go through. So for now, I'm just going to go on with the oral audio presentation that is due on the 28th of May. Your oral presentation that is due, for that you need to record a 5-minute audio presentation. You can post it to YouTube, you can do it in Google Hangout, record it there, post it to YouTube, and let us have a link in an MS Word document, and then upload that onto Funda. Or upload the link in your message when you upload any sort of message to me. I can get it that way, but preferably please in an MS Word document and on Funda. The content for the 5-minute audio presentation is what you did on the research essay, assignment 2, in which you defend the fact that the contemporary worldview in that essay as a worldview. So I've written an essay and grading guide on Funda for you, and notes on how to are also on Funda. So you should be able to get some help with that. All right, at this stage, are there any questions from any viewers at home or anybody at the CLC centers about assignment 4, about the audio presentation? Any questions? Okay, thanks for the question about that. What is going to be different from the contents of the essay to the oral? In the oral, you've only got 5 minutes, so you can't exactly just read out your essay. But in the essay, what I want you to do, at least in the oral, the difference is you need to be able to tell your audience what it is that makes the worldview that you've looked at contemporary, and I want you to tell something about where it's located in the world. In other words, who believes in this worldview, where do they live, what do they do, what do they eat, what do they study, what does the sacred text look like if they have one, and what are the stories that you can tell about it. In other words, you're allowed to get creative with this assignment. And the idea is that you will be able to present something special about that worldview, excuse me, and why that was interesting to you. So I want you to be creative with this presentation and explain to me what makes it a contemporary worldview. Where does it come from? Maybe you looked at Scientology or Mormonism, and maybe these things came from an earlier source. Maybe they disagree from where they come from. So I think it's very important to try and understand you must try and make your audience understand what it is about a contemporary view that's different about a very old worldview. Like, for example, Christianity's been around for over 2,000 years. Now, what makes that different from maybe a Christian sect that we might find today, or a Christian cult? What makes it contemporary? How has it been around in the last 100 or 200 years? Does that help at all? Thanks for the question, Dr. Brooklyn. Yes, contemporary means modern or current. So in other words, if you're looking at something, it must be within the last 200 years at least. Okay, so it must be within the last 200 years. Okay, so nothing older than that would be considered contemporary. Does that help? Okay, good. Let's go on with the tutorial. Okay, so here are some critical thinking skills which I'm going to be giving you. If you want to know where the notes for these notes are on Funda under the resource tab, and they are in the, they should be there under critical thinking skills or under wonderful folders. I'm sorry, I haven't got it open now, but they most definitely are there. And they're called deductive reasoning and explanations, I think. Are you able to open that up on your tablets or on computers in front of you? Okay, so for example, what I want you to learn from this, because it's a particular way of thinking about reasoning, and that is I'm going to teach you a bit about deductive reasoning. So a deductive argument is one in which it is impossible for the premises of an argument to be true and the conclusion false. So the conclusion follows absolutely from the premises that have gone before it. In such way, it's supposed that the proof of the truth of the claim is the conclusion. So here is an example. All men are mortal. In other words, all men are going to die one day. All right? And by this I mean men. Okay? Martin Luther King was a man. That's another premise. And this is going in a particular order. We could have numbered it 1, 2, and 3. And the third one says, the conclusion, Martin Luther King was mortal. That is my conclusion if I believe premises 1 and premises 2. This is how the premise for an argument works. So in this way, this is quite a scientific way. So if A plus B, I must be able to deduce that C, the conclusion, is going to follow from that. It's in a particular order. We deduce A, B, and then C from A and B. So that is what is important there. So I hope this is going to be clear to you. If you have any questions about that, you're welcome to write it, and then I will answer you. That's deductive reasoning, and it is a kind of reasoning that you can use in your essays. That is more in the scientific field where A plus B has to equal C. But we are in the humanities, in the social sciences, in the arts, and we use something that is known more as inductive reasoning. An inductive argument is one where the premises are supposed to support the conclusion in such a way that if the premises are true, it is improbable that the conclusion would be false. And therefore the conclusion follows probably from the premises and the inferences. So what do I mean by that? In other words, this is more arguable, such as, here is an example of inductive reasoning. Martin Luther King was an African-American man. That's one of my premises. The next one is, well, African-American men prefer to eat meat to vegetables. That's another premise. Now I'm coming to a conclusion, or drawing a conclusion. Martin Luther King ate meat. That's my conclusion. But now something's not quite right here. Why don't you look at it and tell me what's missing, or tell me why this isn't deductive reasoning? Can you spot the reasoning problem in this? You can either write it or unmute yourselves, whichever you prefer. I'll give you a minute to think about it.
We think that where they say African American men prefer to eat meat to vegetables is more of a stereotype and not really a reasoning example.
Okay, that's very good. It is true to a certain extent. In other words, there isn't enough evidence in that second premise to be able to draw a conclusion. So the first premise could be very well true, okay, that Martin Luther King was an African American man. We can find photos, we can do all that sort of work on it. But whether African American men prefer to eat meat to vegetables, that is something that's a bit dicky. We don't know if that's true. And therefore, our conclusion is a little bit weak because the second one, the second premise, this one, is problematic. So well done for spotting that. That's correct. So let's move on. I want to take you through the difference between explanations and arguments. We've already looked at arguments in this class, in the tutorial, and we've applied some tools. All of these notes are on Funda under the Resources tab, so you shouldn't get lost with that. So the huge difference with an explanation is that an explanation really goes step by step by step. But an argument is something that defends something or that takes a position. These are the two most important things you need to know when you are dealing with this. So what I want you to see is that you need to determine what is said or read seeks to explain something. So if there's a why or a how is being posed to answer a question, you have to ask yourself, well, what is being explained? Or determine what reasons are being given. So in other words, this is so because, or if it's an answer to why do you do this, how do you do this? Well, you do this like this, or we do this because. Then you know you are dealing with an explanation and not an argument. You've got to find out and be able to critique what is relevant, whether the explanation is relevant to what is being explained. And you've got to determine whether the explanation is coherent with our established knowledge of the world. Okay? In other words, is it something that we can prove? It's got to be possible and believable, or whether or not it is the best possible explanation. Now, I've got a little exercise for you. I'm going to be putting up two examples. These are also in the notes, so if you want to go over them. I'm going to give you two pieces of writing. The sentences are numbered. I want you to identify whether the following two paragraphs are either explanations or arguments. And please analyze them using either helper, or tell me why the thing is an argument, or why the thing is an explanation. For example, here is a paragraph about whether women are safer drivers or not. I'll read it out aloud, and then you can look at it and decide, is it an explanation or an argument? Then I'll read the second one. You can discuss it amongst yourselves, and then we'll take it from there. So, according to this paragraph, women are safer drivers than men. This is because women are naturally less aggressive and are thus less likely to drive aggressively and cause accidents. Men also tend to use cars and their performance to designate social status and may take risks while driving in order to show that their car is of superior quality. In addition, men are generally more likely to experiment with the limits of a car's performance, which encourages speeding. Thus, while men may be better at controlling various aspects of the car's handling, they are also more likely to have car accidents. Okay, that's the first one. I'll put it back on the screen just now. The second paragraph is about the pop group The Beatles. So, this says, sentence one, the Beatles are a more popular band than the Rolling Stones. To this day, the Beatles have had more #1 hits than the Rolling Stones ever had, even though the Rolling Stones have released more albums. The Beatles have also sold more albums worldwide than the Rolling Stones, and they have won more musical awards. In addition, Beatles memorabilia continues to sell well, and certainly outsells that of the Rolling Stones. Despite this, the Rolling Stones are often considered to be a technically better band. Okay, I'm going to take you back to this first one. Right. I'd like you to tell me why you think, whether you think, you can just take a minute or two to look at it, the safer drivers one. Is it an explanation or an argument, and why? If we have any viewers at home, you are welcome to send questions via the Q&A, okay?
Hey, yes, we would say that the first reading is more of an explanation because the article tends to stereotype. It's not to say that men are aggressive and that women are safer drivers. They don't really give solid facts to back up the first statement that is being said. And we think that the second reading is more of an argument because there's solid facts and argumentative statements that are being given that support the introductory sentence.
Okay, that's very, very well done. Can you say which words in the explanation, the first one, which words tell you that it's an explanation?
Because.
Okay, any others?
Likely.
Yeah, likely.
And then there's also the word thus.
Okay.
Good, that's correct. Now I just want to go quickly to the next one just to see what makes it quite a strong argument, the second one. What makes it strong, would you say?
The second article seems to contain more evidence and more solid facts than the first one. They seem to talk about figures and the number of albums sold and the sales of the memorabilia. So yes.
Yes, it's absolutely correct. So in other words, they're giving very hardcore evidence to use for their argument. What would you call the last sentence, sentence 5? What would you say about that?
We're not quite sure, but isn't it an antithesis?
It is that in a way. It is in a way an antithesis, but what it is a counter argument. So what it's doing there is that it's pushing against all this evidence and is saying that despite the fact that the Beatles can be considered to be this very important band because of all the awards and things they've won, technically the Rolling Stones are also considered to be better in another way. So they're not just making this argument that you can push over, they're giving the other side of the argument, and I think that's what's important to note there. Do you get that? Okay, thanks. Let's move on. Okay, I'd like to take you through a few things on fallacies, but what I need to know is whether or not you've got the notes on fallacies in front of you at all. Can you find the notes on fallacies on Funda? I'll just see if I can bring them up at all. Okay, all right. Okay, so what we're going to look at is under fallacies. I just want to take you through some of them. So we've got, for example, there. If you look at page 2 of the fallacies, under 1.7. Okay, can you see there's appeal to majority? 1.7 in fallacies. Just give me a thumbs up if you've got it in front of you. So it's 1.7, and it says appeal to majority. Okay, have you managed to find it? Are you reading it? Can you just give me a thumbs up if you found it?
We can't seem to find it on Funda, but we only can find the document that you're currently showing us.
Okay, let me just see if I can get it on screen share. Okay, it looks like this.
Where can we find it?
Okay, it's on Funda, it's under resources, and it's called fallacies. Any luck?
We don't seem to have it.
Okay, all right. I tell you what we'll do is that I will teach it. I will just teach it from the examples that we had. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what I would like you to know is that these academic fallacies that I have listed examples of here, they concern preaching and, for example, sorry, they don't concern preaching. They concern fallacies that you will find in academia, and often if you are a person of faith, it's quite hard to separate out what you believe from what is being asked of you academically. So, for example, you might find people using an appeal to majority or circular reasoning to make a point because it's based on belief. So, for example, what we've got here is a situation where in the first one, somebody is saying Jesus preached that if we followed him, we would have eternal life. It says so in the Bible. What this is that it's an appeal to tradition. The point is, it is absolutely fine if you believe that, or if you believe in the Bible, and you believe that you have eternal life because it says so in the Bible. But academically, you might want to be able to say that this is what some Christians believe because it says so in the Bible, but you're going to need some more proof. The Bible on its own is a book that is a sacred text with a history and a tradition, but there are lots of other works that have been written about life and death and how people view that. So you can't just appeal to the tradition of the Bible to say something. So that is what we want to point out there. Okay, so that would be, for example, an appeal to tradition. It's a fallacy. In other words, academically speaking, it does not help you prove what it is you need to prove. Does this make sense?
So when you write, you mustn't actually put in your Christian views that you have as absolute truth.
That would be correct, but what you would be wanting to do is to try and make a more of an objective standpoint by standing back and saying, academically, what I'm looking at here is trying to write something about Christians. I can't put in my view. I might believe it's in the Bible, but other Christians might not. So when you're answering an academic question, that is what you have to keep in mind. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
All right, let's do one of the other ones. In other words, let's go to the one that says jungle oats. Jungle oats is the best breakfast food because it fills up your tummy first thing in the morning. Okay. Now, what I want to point out is this is a circular reasoning one. In other words, there's not enough independent evidence given of why jungle oats should be good. First of all, breakfast food fills anybody up in the morning, so it's a bit circular to say that jungle oats is the best breakfast food. In other words, we've got a conclusion here that somebody's made, but it's cycling around and around and around. Can you see that? Okay, I take it that was a thumbs up. Thanks. All right, let's go to another one because this one is also now starting to get a bit more interesting. So the fourth one on the page, we can't let everybody who goes to church not contribute 1/10 of their earnings because then the church wouldn't be able to function. Now this fallacy in the notes is called the fallacy part-whole fallacy. What this is about is the fact that you can't say that because one thing goes wrong, everything else is going to follow. So for example, you can't say that just because most of the people who go to church can't contribute 1/10 of their earning, that the church won't function. So people in this argument are drawing a conclusion by saying that this little bit of people who can't pay or can't help or can't support means the church will crumble. The point is, the church might have 10 morning markets and fundraise that way, or it might fundraise to sort out by getting a foreign donor or something like that. So in other words, it's called, you can't put a part of the problem to be the extension and make a bigger one. Can you understand that? Okay, well done. Now we'll go on. All right, now, then we've got another appeal, which is the first one, the proof that the Christian and Hebrew God exists in the Bible in chapter 1 of Genesis and there is no other greater God because of this text. That is partly also an appeal to majority and tradition. A majority in the sense that people are saying that this is the way that the Christian and the Hebrew God, so that's two huge religions here that are being put out, are being put up as the example, and that there's no other greater God because of the text. Okay, so you've got an appeal to majority, two huge religions, and an appeal to tradition, which is that this biblical tradition means that there can't be any other God. What do you think? Why wouldn't this make sense academically, in other words?
It doesn't make sense because we're not able to prove it. Like, there's not really evidence.
Yes, that's correct. It means there isn't enough academic evidence to be able to say it, and so therefore it is a fallacy. It's an academic fallacy. Okay. All right. So now I'd like to take you to the last one, which is the world is in the mess it is because when not everybody accepts Jesus as their savior, it falls into ruin. Now what that is called is the fallacy. It's just called the slippery slope. In other words, it's saying that unless we do this, unless everybody accepts Jesus as their savior, it means that everything will slip down and fall down and not be the case. Well, why is this not a good academic argument?
It's not to say that everybody's Christians, so you're making a statement of your own beliefs.
Okay, so that's correct. So in other words, that's not in an academic way of looking at that. So what you can see here is that there are a whole lot of different fallacies that that academically wouldn't work. On a belief basis, everybody is entitled to believe any one of these if they want to do that. Okay? But it's not acceptable in terms of academic fallacies. So what I suggest you do is that you try and find the academic fallacies document on Funda resources, and that what you do then is that you do some of these exercises at home and then see if you can apply the fallacy to the example. The examples are also in the Funda file, but the idea is that when you get to rewrite your essay, you could use this as quite a powerful tool to look at whether you've argued correctly or not. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's the work that you need to do for this. Let's just get the screen share up again. Okay, so I'd like to hear if there are any questions that I can answer, any viewers at home or any of you at Docs of Brooklyn. Have you got any questions that I can answer? Are there any questions I can answer for you about assignments or anything that is to come?
Yes, the only thing, we like the course and we like the lecture and everything, but the assignments that we got back, we're a bit negative about that because we did really badly, like all of us. And it gets us a bit down. We don't know really. Yeah, and the comments also a bit harsh, we feel. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, thanks very much for the feedback. I think the issue might be with the fact that people haven't been given a lot of input about how to write an essay. And because we don't, I suppose in the contact classes, we have a way of teaching how to write an essay and what's expected. We were hoping that people would engage with the grading guide and the content guide. And a lot of times when people haven't done that, they've written an essay in which they haven't kind of engaged with what was asked of them. And I think maybe that's why the commentary is coming back quite tough, because it's an academic course, it's a college level, tertiary education. So a lot of people are expecting you probably to write in a way that's quite mature already. But the issue is the content has to be engaged with. It means you have to read, it means you have to write, and it means that there has to be a bit of practice in that. That is why we didn't set an exam for this course. So any feedback you want to write on that front will be very gratefully received. So don't, just say what would have worked, what sort of input on writing an essay or something like that, because that's the only way we can improve these distance courses, is to hear what would have helped you learn how to write better. Any suggestions we can take up while we're speaking to you?
No, it's just the citing. I think that's a thing that's a bit difficult, because we basically understand it, but when you get on an article on the internet, it's difficult to discern. Yeah, and it's like in other courses they say no, you cited too much, and then we got feedback here that we cited too little, and we didn't give enough recognition. And yeah, so.
Okay, I think when it comes to citing, the issue is, you're right that it depends on which lecturer wants what. Is that we would prefer it if you didn't cite so much, well, for this course, because we need to know how you have summarized, how you've pulled together an article. That's what's incredibly important. So in other words, you shouldn't be cutting and pasting from websites. You should be using your own ideas and balancing that up with some of the readings. It should rather be your own conclusions backed up by readings. And those readings shouldn't be internet sites, unless those internet sites are useful for stories or legends or things like that, which are necessary and useful. So what I want to suggest is that you think about writing, in your writing, of how you can say it best and how whatever else that follows can back it up. So that is how, that's the best way I can explain it. But thanks for that input, because it helps us work out what to do for that. Okay. Any other questions or comments or anything else before we sign off?
Thank you.
Thank you, no.
Thank you.
You're fine, bye.
Thanks very much, and have a good week.